Connor Murphy. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Leo from actualized.org. And spirituality, taking psychoactive drugs and, God. All right. Not the usual topic for Bulldog Mindset, but I think this is important. If you're just joining me for the first time, I'm John from BulldogMindset.com. On this channel, I teach you how to be a man. I teach you how to build financial independence, how to get the physique you want, how to get the girls you want, and how to go from the victim mindset to the Bulldog Mindset. Click that subscribe button and go ahead and join us here. And then also, if you haven't already taken the Bulldog quiz, it's up in the corner here in the cards. 10 questions give you a score from 0 to 100. All right, so if you've been watching YouTube, if you've been watching social media, Connor Murphy's made some pretty big splashes with his shift, right? If you don't know who he is, he used to run a prank channel where he basically took off his shirt in front of girls on 6th Street in Austin, Texas, mostly, and just played different kind of pranks and filmed their reactions, okay? He got up to like 2.5 million subscribers doing that, had a lot of success with some other channels related to that as well. And then he went on this trip and he took some ayahuasca. And when he came back from that, things changed, right? I think before that, he started doing some meditation, okay? And I wouldn't say anything that I wouldn't, obviously I expect that Connor will watch this. So I wouldn't say anything that I wouldn't say to his face, right, on this channel. I just don't do that to people. But I do think it's important to talk about what's going on and to give my insights on this, because I think there's some things to learn from this. And I think it's important to think about some of these bigger things and to open some of the doors maybe that Connor has opened, although maybe he wasn't ready to open those doors. And that's my thoughts on this right now. So with that said, okay, continuing the story. So he comes back and he has this sort of enlightenment, and he starts to realize that God is everywhere. There's sort of oneness type of present moment awakening, right? Satori, you could call it, although I don't think it's quite Satori. Frank Yang has also gone down this road, if you know who Frank Yang is. And there's different people that I would categorize as seeing this light. What I would say is the true nature of reality. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean that everything that he's saying right now is correct. It doesn't mean that I agree with it. It also doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay, let's be clear on this, because no one really knows exactly what is going on, and there's this whole duality of right and wrong, and things are both one thing or the other, but the same at the same time. It's hard to understand this non-dualistic viewpoint. It's what was called the Way, right? The Tao or Tao, however you want to pronounce it, is a book about the way, and it is very similar. It's trying to describe something that is indescribable. All right. And that's what I believe that the true nature of reality is. Now, I've discovered this on myself through a different path, through a path of pain, through a path of discipline, through a path of working on myself and self-reflection and putting myself through a lot of physical exertion, everything from running ultra marathon to extreme, dieting and fasting. And it sort of brought me on a similar path. And that's why when Connor had come back and he did his 40-day fast, I connected with him and I started talking to him, and our talks were very productive, especially at the beginning. We talked about a lot of different subjects. He published a lot of the videos on his channel. I published an interview on my channel. And like I said, I think these were good talks. All right. But what I think has happened now, and unfortunately, I think Leo from actualized.org, I think he has it correct. There's a video that was on Connor's channel. I'll put a link to it, where he was on a phone call with Leo. And Leo was saying, hey, look, it's great that you are experiencing these things, discovering some of the true nature of reality, but you're not grounded before you got into this. And so you open this door, essentially, that you're not ready to handle, that you can't handle because you weren't grounded enough before you did this. And now you're kind of going down this path haphazardly and abusing the psychoactive substances, which I agree with that assessment. All right. I don't agree with everything that Leo says as well, although I think he's pretty wise. I like his channel. I like a lot of the content that he produces. So yeah, so that's where we're basically at with this whole thing. And it's interesting, with what Connor's doing right now. I think there's two things going on, to be honest with you. All right. Just to give you my honest assessment of what's going on. Again, knowing him personally, having just spoke with him just a month ago and had a perfectly sane, rational conversation and up to, in previous months, perfectly sane, rational conversations with him. All right. It took me years and years of self-reflection, of work on myself, of grounding myself, of studying Stoic philosophy, of working on my emotional mastery to get to some of the truths that I discovered, right? Reading hundreds and hundreds of books and seeing sort of this, what I would call the true nature of the universe. And again, no one has the complete vision of it, but a glimpse into this. But I believe what Connor did when he went on that ayahuasca trip is that he took a shortcut. I think he was on the path. He was meditating. It wasn't like a completely recreational, haphazard thing. But I don't think he was there developed enough spiritually and emotionally and in a sound enough mind for him to handle that trip and to be productive from that. Now, I haven't done any psychoactive substances aside from THC, basically, or Delta 8. And so I haven't really, experimented with any of that stuff. And I don't really intend to at this point. I don't necessarily think it's bad. I mean, maybe at some point I will, but I feel like I can reach the same sort of spiritual path without having to go down that road. And it's a dangerous road, taking the shortcut there. It's sort of like, when I talk about dating coaching, it's sort of like when I tell guys, all right, you shouldn't drink alcohol when you go out to go meet women because it gives you liquid courage, because you might develop some skill with that. But as soon as the alcohol wears off, you're going to get sucked back. You're not going to have any true growth. And I feel like when you're on psychoactive substances, it prevents you from having true spiritual growth while you're there. You're going to get sucked back. You have to sort of progress and grow on your own. And then maybe that psychoactive substance could be useful to give you a glimpse into where you could reach, right? To just help you to see the path a little more clear, but you still have to walk that path, right? If you take the train takes you back, okay? And sometimes it takes you back further, or sometimes it takes you back to a place where you've never been before that isn't where you want to go. And I think that's to some degree what's happening with Connor, And so I think the second thing that's happening with all that said is that I believe that he is acting, that he's pretending to be more delusional than he is. I think there's some amount of delusion. I think that, again, it's both of these things, right? I believe what's happening here is that he intended to do an act, right? Because when you look at what he did when he came out of the ayahuasca trip and did the 40-day fast and then went to the mental institution, the psych ward for a couple of days, he was doing this whole Jesus thing, resurrection of Jesus thing. And he said in the videos, I'm acting. Okay. And again, I talked to him during some of these time periods and he was perfectly sane and rational, even though on video he was acting not sane and rational because it was an act, because he was acting in order to make a point. He wanted to basically do some kind of reincarnation of Jesus. This was his big thing, trying to reach a bunch of people. And it didn't quite work out how he planned. All right. So I think that's what's happening again. But I think this time he's so far gone that he doesn't even realize that his acting is not an act, if that makes sense, right? There's some amount of him that is making this up and making a show in order to get this attention. And you look at some of the things that he said, because every time he puts out a video, almost every single time I'm acting in there, okay? At least the longer ones. And then when you look at the things like he says, like he did this whole Jake Paul thing, talking about touching him. And he was talking about the victim mindset. He was talking about how, of course I can't change my own mind. Like he was being very satirical in that talk. So in order to do that, you have to have some level of sanity in order to think at a high enough level, right? He keeps on talking about playing 5-dimensional chess. Again, this is in line with playing 5-dimensional chess, right? So, again, I don't know 100%, because in order for him to pull this off, if he is trying to pull this off, he has to play this game with all of his friends as well, right? Everyone that he knows, he has to convince them as well, because otherwise they're going to come out and blow his cover. Kind of like maybe I'm doing now, but am I really? Because I don't know, right? So you can't say, well, John knows because John talked to him and he's perfectly sane and he's got this master plan. I think that's what's going on. I think it's gotten away from him. I don't know for sure. So anyway, yeah, so those are my thoughts on that. And again, I think that, I would highly encourage you to watch the video with Leo talking to Connor, because there's some interesting things there. I think Leo has some really good insights, and what he talked about not being grounded is very true. I think that actually when you look at the video too, that what Connor has to say to Leo, sometimes challenging him, is actually fairly insightful as well, because there's some things where it's like, well, you really have to question like what do you really believe? Because if you really believe that you're God and that it is God's dream, God talking to himself essentially, then it really doesn't matter what happens in this world. Like mortality does not matter. Again, I'm not taking that stance from from saying that I'm going to operate under that assumption, but it does bring up a contradiction, which is interesting, right? Because there is still some ego, right? And so to be purely egoless, which is kind of interesting, because I when I look at what Connor's doing, I can kind of see that, right? Imagine if you just said whatever you wanted to say, whatever came to your mind, you did whatever you wanted to do, you had no filter, but you still had some kind of a plan. That'd be interesting, right? That would be the complete death of ego, to be able to completely say whatever you want to say, to have no sense of shame, to have no sense of embarrassment, to just not care what other people think, to just say whatever kind of things that you want to say. Now, again, someone could say, well, that's just a drug-induced mania. And yeah, I think maybe there's some degree of that. And like I said, it's a shortcut, right? Because ultimately what we want to become is self-actualized, right? Ultimately, we want to reach a point where we are uninhibited, where we can do and say things. But see, it needs to be tempered by logic. And this is where Leo is right in, I believe, in correcting some of what Connor is saying, in the sense that if you are completely uninhibited, but you have a plan, right? But you are operating within this world to execute on that plan, then there's nothing really preventing you. There's no ego in the sense that's preventing you. There's no fears. There's none of those things that are preventing you from taking all the actions that you want, or that are influencing your behavior and what you say and filtering you. But they're still moving towards an important direction that you're purposely trying to achieve. So the other thing I kind of want to say about this whole thing is that, and this was something that Leo was talking about as well, is that what Connor is doing in a way is taking away from the truth of some of the things that he's espousing, right? Because again, I'm not saying anything against Connor. I like Connor. He's a friend of mine. Okay. I want to see what's best for him. I'm also not going to, pretend like I know what's best for him, because I don't. Okay. But I do feel that the way that he's going about some of these things is that it's making a parody of it, right? And it's like, maybe at a very, very high level, you can understand what he's doing, and you can say, okay, well, yeah, it's like, this is it. This is a totally unfiltered, like he's pointing out the hypocrisies of life and really shaking the cage, rattling everyone's cages so they can see that this is all false. All these realities, all this duality is false. It doesn't exist. None of this is all just a construction. It's just a creation of your mind. But the problem is that what it looks like to people who are not very far along that path, all right, and I expect that'll be a majority of people, is that he's just crazy and he's just doing crazy stuff. And so when he connects himself with spiritual teachers who are along that path, it sort of ties that together, and they say, well, they're crazy like Connor, or even the psychoactive component. Again, I'm not a big, that's where I kind of depart, and I'm not sure, I'm not sure whether or not taking psychoactive drugs is a good thing. I think there may be some benefits from it, but I haven't gone down that road. Obviously, I'm not, I could, but I'm not going to go down that road, even a small amount right now. I don't feel like I need to. I feel like I can still advance and I don't need to, and that maybe you don't ever need to. All right. So, but there are some people that do find it good and beneficial for spiritual growth. And he's sort of making it look like, wow, I better not ever touch this stuff. And maybe that is true. Maybe it is better to not ever touch this stuff. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that it's not doing a service to even what I'm saying, right? So now if I want to share with you guys and say, look, this is why I believe some of these truths that Connor's talking about, a lot of people are going to say, well, Connor's acting like a crazy idiot. So obviously what he believes can be true. And if you're saying that you believe something similar to Connor, I don't get it, John. No. So that's the unfortunate part of that. So I don't know. I have a lot of mixed thoughts on this. Like I said, I can see what I think he's attempting to do, and it could work. It could work to a degree. I just don't. I don't think that that's the right path. And I had this conversation with Connor before on one of our calls, and I talked about how, like, my sort of way of teaching the same thing that Connor's teaching is to do it from the ground up, to basically say, look, I know what you want, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You want to make money, you want to have sex with hot girls, you want to have big biceps, right? You want to like build up these stuff, become financially independent. And I'm going to show you kind of how to do those things. The trick is I'm going to show you how to become a better man and to improve yourself and to master your emotions and to practice Stoic philosophy. And that is going to enable you to do those things. I'm going to teach you discipline, to discipline your body, which will result in disciplining your mind, which will result in you getting those things, even though I know those things aren't really important. Right? Because if you don't fulfill those base needs, those base desires, if you don't know what it's like to have sex with women, if that's what you are wanting, if you don't know what it's like to become financially independent, to build a business, to be able to be successful in those areas, and to have that confidence or that validation, as much as it's bad to seek external validation, if you don't know what it's like to get that, you can't evolve past that, right? And my hope for you guys following this channel, and some of you are there and you're on that path, is that you grow past those things, just like I had to grow past those things, because I achieved those things, right? In my life, I had it all, right? And Connor had a similar experience, right? We talked about this, and he had the girls, he had the money, he had the body, right? I went through all that myself, and it's nice, but it led me to depression, right? Becoming financially independent and retiring was one of the worst things that ever happened to me, because I didn't know how to deal with that. I was thinking that things and accomplishments and possessions would make me happy. I didn't realize it was like who I was going to become, and the journey, the process of becoming a better man was the thing that would make me happy. And then I sort of have been moving even further down that path to one of realizing that what is important is love. And I know that sounds a little weird to you guys, but that's the kind of progression that I believe that is a natural progression to take as you discipline the mind, as you discipline the body, and you discipline the mind, and you discipline the emotions, you come to this inner peace, this tranquility, as the Stoics called it, which brings you to this higher level where you're left with just love for people. And that's, if there's a God, however you believe in God, I believe that there is God in the sense that it doesn't even matter that there is a God in some sense, whether it be the universe or all of us are God, and we all have to be part of God to some degree. If you really do the thought experiment and you think about, the act of creation, then what God actually represents, and every religion just about, I don't think there's a religion that disagrees with me on this, that God is love, that's it. And so anything that's moving towards love is towards God, and everything that's moving away from love is away from God. So anyway, that's the sort of the progression that I would like to take people on, because it's a progression that I'm going on. All right. And you guys have been joining me on my journey in life as I've been discovering many of these things. And I have to meet people at all different levels. Whereas Connor's approach, and we talked about this, was to start at the top and be like, I'm just going to give it to you. I'm going to tell you why you are Jesus, why you are God, and just, here you go. We're just going to go right into the highest level of spiritual truths and start there and teach there. And I'm going to shock the fuck out of you to make you see this, right? It's a different way. And again, like I said, I disagree with that way, because I believe that way, it creates more of a cult. It creates people that are hoping for something, that are wanting to take shortcuts instead of to become better, to really spiritually evolve. You have to go down a long path. It's a long journey. It's a journey where you have to purge those demons, where you have to fight each one of those things that's within you until you can let go and have a non-attachment, and let go of this thing and let go of that thing and let go of more and more and more and more and more and more. And that is what feeds the ego to the point where you don't completely shatter and lose the ego, but you see the ego as a tool that you have, that you can utilize in order to get things done, to function. But you don't live in the ego. You don't see the ego as your center, as your identity. Instead, you have a stronger identity. You see the reality of life, which is that this body, that who you are right now, is only like a toe in the greater body of where you are. You're not here right now. This is only a part of you. This is only like your toe, right? What you think is your entire reality is just your toe. There's more to you and more to your true nature than what is just here. So those are my views. Okay. I know they sound a little crazy. All right. Especially when I associate it with some of the things that Connor Murphy believes, but they're somewhat in alignment, as interesting as that is. And I'm happy to discuss more about this, and we'll talk more. I mean, if you guys like this video, by the way, if you haven't already checked out the Bulldog Mindset membership, go check that out. There's a link down below, $7 for the first month. And it's a huge community, over 900 men that are working on improving themselves and growing and going down this path. If that path that I talked about spiritual development sounds good to you, join us, right? Because I want to show you how to get the things that you need in life at the carnal, physical nature, so that we can transcend those things and get to the real things. But I take the approach that I need to teach you how to get laid. I know that sounds silly, but I need to teach you how to get laid. I need to teach you how to make money and how to build a business. And I need to teach you how to build your physique and to go through that discipline. Because if you don't get those things, you're not ready to go on. Because no matter what, if you're hungry, I can't tell you don't need food. I can't tell you that you're a robot. You don't need food to survive, actually. You need to actually eat the food and realize that, and quell that hunger, and realize that you're always going to get hungry again. And so you need something more than just something that fills your hunger. So check it out, $7 for the first month. All right, that's how you support this business and what I'm doing. All right, and it's a great community of guys, lots of new lessons in there. I'm going to talk more about some of this stuff in there too. I'm going to make kind of a higher level path. So yeah, kind of a long video on this. I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on the whole thing. And the last thing I'll say about this whole thing is just don't just dismiss Connor outright. He's a good guy. All right. I've talked to him. I know him. Like I said, I consider him to be a friend. He's a good guy. He's fighting his own demons. He's fighting his own battles, just like all of us are. Okay. And he's on a path. I hope that he's on the right path. I hope that his path will take him where he needs to go. And maybe sometimes the right path looks like going the wrong way for a little bit first. And then you learn from that. And maybe this is what's going to happen. And my hope is that this is just an act to a degree, and that it's gotten a little bit away from him, but it'll come back to him, and that he will alter his way of doing things, because I feel like he could be a very good spiritual leader. I feel like he's gone through some of the journey, and maybe this is part of the journey to say that, hey, look, this is the thing. Maybe at the end of this, he says, yeah, taking the shortcut, going through the psychoactive way, it's not the way. You can go down a tunnel that you might not be able to come back from. I've been there, right? Maybe that's the whole purpose of this. I believe everything works for a reason. Everything happens for a reason, and so we will see what happens.